again, the topic of this particular panel discussion is transition planning for teens with epilepsy. And we are very pleased to have with us our four panelists, Dr. Jules Constantinou, who is a pediatric epileptologist at Henry Ford Comprehensive Epilepsy Center, and also a regular participant at our Camp Discovery program. So really appreciate his help with that and his presence here today. John Rose, who is a teacher consultant at the Washtenaw Intermediate School District. Michelle Brunsch, who is a parent of a young adult with epilepsy. And Olivia Moses, a young adult with epilepsy who will be starting at Michigan State University this fall. I think we'll have a lot of great perspectives to share here. So transition, as I mentioned, is a huge topic, and we could easily spend an entire conference talking just about transition. So today we're only going to provide a broad overview of the many different aspects of transition planning. We'll discuss some strategies and resources that can help, and we'll leave plenty of time for questions and answers. So let's start by talking about medical transition. This process includes gradually giving the teen more and more responsibility for self-management, encouraging them to take a more active role and a leadership role during medical appointments, planning for future health insurance needs, and then facilitating the handoff from pediatric neurology to adult neurology. So Dr. Constantinou, can you walk us through this process and some of the most important steps along the way?
Thank you, Russ, and thank you so much for having me. As you said, transition is such a rich term, and I think it encompasses so many aspects, and I think transition is an issue not just for teenagers with epilepsy, but for every teenager. It's not just transfer of care, and I think it's a richer term, and it encompasses, it's not a step, but it's a process, and it's a process which begins early. So when we think about transition, I think we need to think about the factors which are imposed by the epilepsy. We need to think about factors imposed by adolescents, and then we need to come to grips as how we can facilitate that transfer. So that transition, and I think that there is a difference between pediatric care and the adult model of care. Some very famous epileptologists, the Campions, who come from Nova Scotia, did a survey, and they asked adult neurologists what they thought of pediatric neurologists, and they asked pediatric neurologists what they thought of adult neurologists. So the adult neurologist, the child model of care is the nurturing, child-centered environment, and the adult neurologists thought that the pediatric neurologists were indulgent and controlling, and I guess I'm a little bit guilty of that sometimes. The pediatric neurologists thought that the adult neurologists don't care too much, and obviously we need to spend a little time in each other's clinics. Epilepsy is not a single disorder, as you all know, it's a spectrum disorder, and I think issues of transition are different for every child. So we know that even what we used to call benign epilepsy, so these are the epilepsies like childhood absence epilepsy. There's so much to say that I'm going to just try not to take up too much time. But if we look at, what we call the benign epilepsies, childhood absence epilepsy, benign Rolandic epilepsies, which are epilepsies that we outgrow, the terminology has changed. Now we talk about these as self-limited epilepsies, because we're recognizing that even benign epilepsies can be associated with so many other issues, attentional issues, learning differences, issues of stigmatization. We have the benign epilepsies, the self-limited epilepsies. We have epilepsies which are lifelong, particularly juvenile myoclonic epilepsy, which is often pharmacosensitive or sensitive to medication, but in which seizures are going to be lifelong, and the teenager needs to learn to modify lifestyle issues. And then the third group is the children that have, and we've heard some parents here who have children with disability, with other neurological issues, cognitive impairments, motor impairments, learning issues. And I think for each child, the issues of transition are different. So we think about the issues of the epilepsy, and then we need to think about adolescence and what's it like to be a teenager. It's been a long time since I was a teenager, and I think I've forgotten what it was like.
I have 3 people. More allegedly normal people.
And so if we look at Erickson's sort of model of how we develop, so adolescence is a time we develop identity, that we develop autonomy, that we develop relationships and independence from our parents, how a healthy adolescence develops a need for intimacy and not isolation. And as we transition into adulthood, we want to become creative, productive members of society and not static. So how do we, and I think it has to be a village, it's not just the pediatrician, but the family and the community supports and the school supports, which are all very important in fostering that transition. I'm going to read a little bit. This is from an article by the Camfields. It's an article on transition, and it sort of highlights some of the issues that teenagers with epilepsy face. So autonomy is affected by epilepsy. What to adolescents? And this is something that we hear. I'm going to put in a plug for Camp Discovery when we do the Ask the Doctor sessions, and we speak to the teenagers about what issues are important for them in terms of their epilepsy. So in terms of autonomy, and this is a struggle for adolescents, a struggle for parents, letting go. But think of the things that I can no longer do without supervision. Take a bath, swim, stay up late, drink beer, drive, have babies, become a pilot, join the armed forces, take aspirin, scuba dive, go to dances with straight legs. All these things that restrict the adolescent body image, which is so important to adolescents. There's something terribly wrong with me. Remember, I've never seen one of my seizures. The pill will mess up my hormones. They'll mess up my bones. The pills will make me fat. My hair will fall out. Peer group identity. No one will go on a date with me. No one else has a stupid problem. What happens if I have a seizure at school and I wet my pants? Identity issues. I'm not supposed to do most of the things that my friends do. What if I die in my sleep during Sudan? So those are the concerns of the adolescents, and then put that in the context of their environment in the school. There was a survey, 2001 US survey of 19,000 normal high school students who were asked about what they thought about epilepsy. 90% of high school students thought that epilepsy was a mental illness. 30% were unsure. 50% were uncertain if people with epilepsy could drive cars, marry, have children and work. And 51% thought that people died during seizures. 1/2 of respondents were unsure if epilepsy is contagious. So that's what our teenagers are going through and what they're battling. And our goal is to help them along the way to become whole individuals and productive individuals. So transition is a process. It needs to begin early. Sometimes I think of the pediatric relationship as triangular. Typically we have a parent, we have the physician, and we have the child. And a lot of times, especially with young children, it's hard for us to remember because in the appointment time we have limited times, but the child sometimes gets relegated to the bottom of the group. But as the child matures, as the child grows up, we want him to take more independence, and the pyramid we wanted to invert so that the child, the adolescent, the young adult, is making his own decision. I think in the handout there's a nice pathway to encourage transition, which is provided by the Epilepsy Foundation. So it begins early, in early adolescence. I like to think about transition in various terms. I think, you know, the phrase that we all use these days is self-management or efficacy. And I think that's such a weak term, because really what we're talking about is self-advocacy. We're talking about empowerment. We're talking about responsibility and independence. So it's really it's a vibrant process that we should be helping the children along the way. What are the barriers to transition? I think, you know, as pediatric neurologists, you know, we've had a lot of times we've had, you know, long relationships with our families. Sometimes it's hard to let go of the families. I guess I have a little bit of a luxury in the sense that I work in an adult group, so you know, when a 21-year-old patient of mine or a 24-year-old patient who comes to see me, he's not coming into the clinic with lots of other little kids, and so the barriers are letting go of that relationship. You know, the adolescent, the young adult is going to have to learn how to negotiate the steps into making appointments, and you know, the adult model is perhaps less comprehensive. Sometimes it's, the way that we perceive it is that it's just, you know, your medications, and so there are barriers. And I think also for, you know, more complex conditions, when we ask adult neurologists, a lot of them are comfortable with dealing with, you know, the juvenile myoclonic epilepsies, the generalized epilepsies, but the more complex epilepsies, the Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, the kids on diet, the kids with special needs. I think that can be a challenge. I don't think we do transition very well. You know, if you look at even a benign, so-called benign or self-limited epilepsy like childhood absence epilepsy, when we look at, this was a study in Nova Scotia, if you look at childhood absence epilepsy, we look, many of the children do not graduate high school, many of them are underemployed, there's a higher risk of alcoholism, and unwanted pregnancy or unplanned pregnancy. So we need to be supportive, and we need to recognize that epilepsy is not just seizures and not just medication, but we need to be thinking about, you know, so when I think about transition, the things that I think about are firstly self-advocacy. We want to encourage the children to advocate for themselves, to ask questions for themselves. So I've spoken too much.
No, we're fine. We're going to extend that, so we're fine.
So you know, so advocacy, as you say, it's such a big topic. So advocacy, so the children learn to ask questions. We want to learn to manage our disorder independently. You know, what medications do we take? How's our adherence? You know, we ask teenagers, 30% to 50% do not take their medications on a regular basis. We want to look at lifestyle and health issues, things like, you know, not enough sleep, getting enough sleep, alcohol and drugs, which are questions and issues that every adolescent has to face. We want to look at career development opportunities. We want to look at psychosocial aspects, relationships. You know, who do you talk to if you're feeling down? Who do you talk to if you're feeling angry? What do you do if you're being bullied? And then sexual issues. So we start early. Usually we start thinking about it at 11, 12 years of age. I think at 14 to 15 years of age, we should be encouraging the children to ask questions, maybe encouraging them to take some responsibility for their medications. And then maybe by about 16, 17, maybe time alone with the physician, which I must say I'm awfully good about. But, so it is a long process, and there are many issues, and I think that is definitely tough.
Thanks. And then Michelle and Olivia, would either of you like to share any challenges that you've experienced with medical transition or tips, suggestions?
Well, as a parent, I can tell you my road has been bumpy. I'm like, sometimes, as you said, you know, that transition between pediatric and adult has been a tough one. My daughter loved her pediatric doctor, and of course they were friends. And then when it came time for her to change over to an adult doctor, she met him, and it was very adult conversation. She didn't want me a part of it at all. So of course I kind of sat back and said, cool, I'll just here for support. And then of course, then I get brought into it. So she kind of wants to tell the story that she wants to tell, and not the total story. And I think that's the big heart that we have, that you know, love you dearly, but you know, the kids just want to be, they don't want this stigma. So they don't want to tell the whole story, or they don't want to tell that they haven't taken their medication, or why their front tooth is cracked because they had a seizure and because they're not taking medication. So the parents have to continue to be a big part of that. And what I was going to say about the transition is, I would like it to start much earlier. I did not do this well. I wish I would have started at 14. I wish maybe I would have known who the adult doctor would have been, so that I could have maybe paired them together, or had her go back and forth even, or even had did a conference call or something like that. I almost said it would have been good to have like an orientation day, even like, you know, how they do from middle school to high school, like done something so that I could ease that transition, because now we've gone from not really liking to have epilepsy ever in her life, but still will go to the doctor, to let's pretend I don't have this anymore and I don't want to go to this adult doctor. So it's been very bumpy. So the only thing I can think of is I wish I would have started earlier and maybe gotten the name of an adult doctor and had a conference call between the 3 of us or 4 of us, or the team, as we keep calling it, the team. I think that would have been a phenomenal idea. So if you have younger children, maybe that would help.
All right, Olivia?
Yeah, so I guess I still haven't transitioned to my adult neurologist, but I know who he is. So that's a good first step. And I actually am on a transition work group at the University of Michigan CSMA Children's Hospital. So I'm helping sort of start this transition method at CSMA Hospital. And with both my pediatric neurologist and my coming adult epileptologist, we're all sort of finding ways to sort of guide sort of a transition path for adolescents to going to adult neurology.
And when did you start kind of taking more of a leadership role in medical appointments?
Maybe a year ago.
Okay.
My dad still takes it over sometimes.
Forced habit.
Right. So that is obviously one of the bigger challenges. So thank you. Now the issue, one of those self-management issues, which is taking medications, remembering to take medications yourself, and possibly even refilling prescriptions. Parents may be very reluctant to give that responsibility to their kids, particularly if the child is dealing with organization issues with their organization or memory, that can be, and because of the consequences of missed medication, it's obviously something parents may be reluctant to do. How can, what are some strategies to help with that taking on more responsibility for medication management?
Well, a couple years back, I started sort of watching my parents organize all of my medications into the AM and PM weekly medication box. And about a year ago, I started just doing it on my own, and now I'm just telling them, please open the pill box. I don't know the combination. Can you just give me my pills so I can refill all of my medications? And I take it all on time now, and I know, like, I have reminders on my phone, and if I accidentally forget to take my medication, I will put that on my phone because I need to have every single thing down. But you also have to consider like your child's well-being, like mentally, because my pills have been in a lockbox for years and years because of my depression and anxiety. And so since I had tried to overdose on some of my medications, they were locked up. And so I obviously was not trusted to, do my own medication and have it out in the open like that. So it took some time to transition from having it all locked up and not knowing if I would go into a depressive state or.
Right, so a lot of different factors involved.
Yeah, and I was going to say adult means different things to different people. Like my daughter, still, even though I let her do as much as she will, she still won't take the doses. Or I'll say, a day will go by and I'll see it still sitting there, and I go, well, on day 2, you can expect you'll probably have a seizure if you don't take these medications. And so it's okay then. We've tried the phone, we've tried writing it in a calendar, we leave everything out in open, to see it Monday through Friday. I hate to say, but peer pressure is a big one. Her friends will see it if they're at our house, and they tell her, "Did you take your meds?" And that seems to be something that's actually helpful. But we have not made that transition yet at 19 to taking it, and even going away. I have to tell you though, at Camp Discovery, she's had the pleasure of going for over 10 years, and every year she comes home with a new energy. I'm going to do this all on my own, because she talks about what's going on and how to do it, and every year, and so I think that's just.
I think that's an important thing. I don't think transition is set in stone.
No.
Like 18, you got a divorce from your pediatric doctor, and I think for everybody it's different, and it's going to be. It's not one size fits all.
I like to use the word sometimes independence and interdependence. I'll always have interdependence. If I didn't have my wonderful wife with me, half the things I would do in my life would not be the best. But we do that all the time. And having those things go with anything in general, getting the medical appointments, having a second person with you to do that is extremely important. And not having to feel like you have to be independent, but there are, figure out those avenues and those support systems and mechanisms that are in there so that somebody can be successful as they can.
Great. Thank you. So we're going to transition to school transition services. So for students with individual education programs or IEPs, I'm shocked by how many times parents have told me that they didn't realize that transition planning was a part of that. And so John, can you talk about some of the steps involved in transition planning in the school?
Federal law tells us that we're supposed to start at age 16. I think middle school, maybe even earlier, would be better in order to do that. And I think it's extremely important to have an understanding of that. There are 4 basic questions on IEPC and transition that we consider. As an adult, where you're going to live, work, employment, career, further education, and community participation. And those folks who may have epilepsy, if they have an IEPC as well, we follow along the same continuum. That usually about 80% of students with IEPCs will graduate with a diploma. 10 to 15% are those tweeners, which I think are the ones that are the toughest to figure out. Should they earn a diploma? Should they not earn a diploma? What are the services and the supports afterwards? And 4 or 5% of people who may have epilepsy as well may have other significant challenges as well. and would need more supports. I'm glad it was that reference earlier about special education services in the state of Michigan right now are available until a person reaches the age of 26 if they have not earned their high school diploma. The high school diploma does end special education services. So one thing I wanted to mention right away is you look at things regarding IDEA, Section 504 and ADA, is IDAs with IEPCs and things like that, that does not happen in college. Okay? So that self-determination piece and that self-advocacy piece is really important for those kids who go to college. We, by law, through special education, have to help those students with with that planning and all that thing they do with the IEPC. Once a student goes to college, they have to self-report the supports they need at a college situation. Your learning support centers at all colleges and universities are extremely important. And if they need those helps educationally, they need to do it right away. If they don't do that, they start a semester thinking, oh, I don't need these helps or supports, and they start to go through that semester and they struggle, and then request supports. It's not retroactive. And colleges and universities will not seek out people with disabilities to do that if it's a responsibility of the individual student. That's extremely important to understand. Because if not, like I say, free and appropriate college or education in K-12, many times I'll talk to high school students, does it cost money to go to college? Do they care if you pass or fail in some respects? No. And if you don't, you have to repay those classes again. So it's extremely important to have that, to understand that as well, too. One other thing I wanted to mention real quickly is what I call person-centered planning. I think is really important. One thing I think is really helpful, I think of some planning and things you need to go through before you actually go through IPC processes and things like that. And person-centered planning is something that I like. It's a very informal process where people sit down and get together with the focus of that individual person as being the foremost important thing about it. Talking to them about what, I don't necessarily always like to use the word dream, but what your future plans are, where you're at right now, what's your history, and what are the steps along the way so that you could be successful in whatever that endeavor may be.
There's two things that I was just kind of piggyback on. One is, here at Schoolcraft College, I brought my daughter here with her IEP, and again, I let her go on her own, but then she called me in, and that was fine. And they did a phenomenal job of putting down a list of resources for her and accommodations. Actually, it exceeded her IEP. So right here, they have that service, and Washtenaw County had a really good parent night where all the colleges came, Michigan State was there, where you could go around and talk to all different colleges about that transition plan. It was fabulous. I don't know if you're having it again this year, but
They usually do. I think if you're thinking the same thing, there's a teacher or an actual counselor that's got it.
Yes.
Goes it together.
Yep, and
He does an excellent job.
He does an excellent job, and they had it here in high school 2 years ago. I didn't go last year, I went 2 years ago. And it was a great resource, and they were the ones that said, just keep a copy of your IEP, and when you go in to the community college or the university level, give this to your child to take, and they have to be a self-advocate. But of course, as parents, we're still back in the background with an extra copy. And we just are, until we transition it, we are, until that happens, and making sure that they have a copy of it and they don't lose it. If my house, it's lost. So we make extra copies and take that in, and they did a great job and did a great interview at Schoolcraft here. Her name was Denise Shaw. Did a great interview with my daughter, asked her questions. There was no hiding anything because she asked her questions that were very telling, like, are you really comprehending this? How organized are you? Do you really need audio for your testing or not? Of course, you can say no, but then ask the question again in a different way, and before you know it, that's an accommodation that was written down. So, phenomenal. They did a phenomenal job right here in our community. How about you?
Well, every college handles it differently, and they are required to, I think, just have some sort of support system. Not necessarily a good one, but a support system. One of the reasons I chose to go to Michigan State is because of this thing called Project Venture, where they actually teach kids like on a 2-day, 1-night stay on campus about Section 504 of the Rehab Act, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, the ADA, and a lot of other things, and then stuff about college and adjusting to that, and how they have the Resource Center for Persons with Disabilities. And so there you can create a verified individual services and accommodations paper, or visa, and it basically lists all your needs, and it's a lot like the 504. You have to go to your professors and sort of tell them, hey, these are my accommodations that I am allowed to receive, and you need to give them to me, basically. And so it's really just an easier transition that way.
Is it comforting for you?
Yeah.
Olivia, I think that's a good point too, because also if you look at different colleges and universities or community colleges or whatever, you want to take a look at the support systems that they have there because they can look very differently. And unfortunately, sometimes it's the people who may be involved and maybe they're one day and gone the next. But you really want to take that extra time to look at those types of supports because you want to build in success in terms of, I heard a professor talk about this, is that in high school it is about success. In college it's more about access, but you still want to be successful in those endeavors, and are there the right support systems that are built in there so that you can build. If you ever take a look online, like career cruising, anything like that, the graduation rate in general in college is like 50%. That's the general populations in 4 years or 5 years. I mean, so if you think about that, then if you add on some of the things, the challenges that people may have with that, how more difficult that may be to do that, all the more important to feel comfortable with the university and feel comfortable with the support systems. Another thing I want to mention with that as well too, there are some support systems within community agencies that are extremely important to be successful after post-secondary or after high school as well too. Michigan Rehabilitation Services is one organization that can be very helpful in terms of figuring out career and employments and things of that nature. We haven't talked much about students with more significant challenges and stuff, but each county has a community mental health agency which can help with living supports for folks who have disabilities as well too. Those are two of the major ones. Center for Independent Living is another organization that's extremely helpful in getting to know, to help folks with resources. The other one I'll put together is ARPS in each individual communities are great advocacy support centers, and Washtenaw County developed the Washtenaw Association for Community Advocacy. One more thing I want to add real quickly, and I'm bouncing around with it. I also think like going to the doctor's office and having somebody there, I really think it's great that parents bring advocates to meetings, to IEPCs and things like that. It's an intimidating and daunting process. I always felt that way. I was married to my wonderful wife about 10 or 15 years before I had these things called kids. But when you have somebody sitting there talking about your child and the challenges they present, it can be a daunting task. And if you're sitting at a table where there's a special education teacher, a psychologist, a social worker, all these different people here, it can be a very intimidating process. And having somebody there to help with you, to help with that. And that's why I also think so much of that is brought in with planning. I think somebody else had mentioned earlier about if you can educate yourself in doing that so you're not as intimidated by the process. I think that's important too, because you are part of that team, and students are. And with that transition phase of it, bringing the students at the table, have them taking ownership. I like to do what I call person-led IEPCs, or student-led IEPCs, where the students actually run their IEPCs while they're learning to do that in high school. Again, that skill set to take initiative, that it's about me, nothing about me without me. And this is important for you. And if you're running your meeting, the other thing is the dynamics of having a meeting when the student is doing it, for parents' sake, in terms of letting go, and other people letting go, and empowering them to do that, can help with that self-determination and self-advocacy piece as well too. Because it is empowering them to make decisions.
A couple of things too, I was just going to mention, I just remember there's the MCTI, the Michigan Career Technical Institute. They have a week-long summer program that my daughter went to, where they do an assessment and they look at the different skill levels, and as a result of that, it was not only what their skill level and skill set was career-wise, but it was also independent living. And so I think that was a way for me to have someone else say, here's where you are with your independent living, are you ready or not? Instead of always coming from the parent. So I thought that was a good experience as well.
And you can gain that information through Michigan Rehabilitation Services.
Right.
It's MCTI, so located in Plainville, Michigan.
Yeah, and it's a great thing as well. Last thing I was going to say about the diploma, and you were saying that, a good 80% of the students are ready to go to Michigan State or wherever, but there's that 20% that aren't, and my daughter happened to be in that 20%, and I have sat for a while going, should I have pushed that diploma, or should I have held back? Because it's a very bumpy transition right now, not work ready, not really college ready, I have to be honest with you. Lots of other emotional issues that are going along with this, still grasping with the fact that they have a chronic illness, some depression, some anxiety, all those things kind of come into play. So once that diploma is obtained, a lot of your services are cut off, and that's a tough one. So I think sometimes as parents we push, we want them to get that diploma because it's a very proud moment. But on the other hand, in hindsight, I'm kind of going, maybe I should have slowed my roll a little and let her go at her pace and really, because we went to William D. Ford also in the grandparents program, and she went through the first year, and then the funds had been cut. So she could not go back as an adult to finish that program. And because she graduated, there's no funding available, and there's no programs around like that anymore. So it's a real tricky line, but I don't hate to be gloomy, but I think I've made enough mistakes that I would like you not to.
I think that's the challenging part, that 10 to 20% group.
Yeah.
They earn a diploma because they're on that cusp of that.
Yeah.
Right.
What are the advantages or the disadvantages of that?
And John, can you talk about how a personal curriculum can maybe help students with IEPs to get a diploma if they decide to go that route? And then the other types of services, special education services that are available until the age of 26 if they choose not to get a diploma.
Sure. Back in 2005, the state of Michigan passed the MMC requirements for graduation. Before that, you know what the requirements were that the state had for local districts to issue diplomas were? Which was one thing, a credit in civics. In 2011, we put together one of the most comprehensive Michigan merit curriculums in the country. And to me, it's just a little thing about yin and yang here. If you go from having one of probably the easiest requirements for graduation rates, and you go to one of the most stringent, what do you think happens to your graduation rate? And the big one is probably Algebra 2. Is probably the one that a lot of people will look at as well too. So when they devised this law, they passed the law in 2006, it was implemented in 2011. The other thing they brought to it was the personal curriculum piece of it. So if there are students, and actually though I really think originally personal curriculum was developed for students who were probably gifted in certain areas and things like that to forego certain parts of it. Let's say you want to go in math and sciences and stuff, but you had these other credits in the other areas to go to do that. And I personally really think they kind of went, okay, we got to do something about special education. And to begin to say it was brought out rocky and kind of is probably saying a minor. It was really challenging. So right now, there is an option, but it's up to local districts to make that determination. Part of your IPC, part of that as well for transition is course of study. And to me, there's a checkbox, and that's what worries me. It's like a light switch you turn on or turn off. People might just say, oh yeah, your diploma track, no, your certificate. And there's not a lot of thought and process going into it. And I think that alludes to that transition difficulty that's there. But the two main options possibly are, if you earn your high school diploma, that means you're done with your K-12 education system, which means you're done with special education. If you go on to receive a certificate of completion, special education services are allowed to you up until your 26th year, but each year you have to hold an IEPC to go over goals and objectives and things that you're working on in order to do that. A personal curriculum could be looking at those students who may be struggling to earn their diploma, but struggle in certain content areas in order to earn that diploma. And so it's usually, it could, and from school district to school district, it could look extremely different in terms of what they set up for criteria for that as well too. Another thing I want to throw out there is the word EDP, an educational development plan, which most people probably haven't heard about and stuff as well too. But the state of Michigan mandated that by 8th grade, every student, whether they have an IEPC or not, should be set through with what they call an educational development plan. And it should be reviewed every year. And in that, you should go career cruising, My Dream Explorer are two of the online kinds of tools that are there. And my thinking is in general in schools, I call it the cattle call. I hate to say it that way. They usually bring hundreds of kids in to do computers. Let me know if it's right. And they sit up there and they do it. Sometimes the kids are taking it seriously and sometimes they are not. It's hard to, the other thing about transition is, I was going to be a lawyer and I became an educator. And I did this thing called Special Olympics in college. So it's the journey along the way, and things can change drastically along the way. But with this as well too, with your EDP, I think it would be important if those kids are struggling with this and with personal curriculums as well too. And that's part of what you have to look at for a personal curriculum is how that aligns up. So if you're struggling in certain areas, but you want to try to earn your high school diploma and move on to something else, the district could look at you can use the word modifying or changing some of the high school requirements in terms of seeking a diploma and graduation. It's a separate meeting from the IEPC. It's technically illegal to do. You can talk about it at the IEPC, but it should be a separate held meeting to work on a personal curriculum. In my experiences with the ones that are most successful, your high school counselors are the ones who are heavily involved in it. as well as your special ed people as well too, and they can look at modifying the curriculum so you can earn a diploma, but it needs to also be focused in terms of what your career goals are as well too. So in other words, say a student may also have epilepsy but have a learning disability in a specific area. As long as their career goal, maybe, I don't know how to explain it, but maybe this is the way of doing it. There was a college professor that said a person was looking at personal curriculum, wanted to become an architect, but had a learning disability but really struggled with geometry and things like that. That's not a good match. See that because you're going to need, like she said, you want somebody building a bridge who's not good at geometry. Probably not. But if there are career goals that are there and the things that challenge you in those specific areas are things that may not impede upon your success, whatever that future plan is, you could do that. So, but certain districts, and it's amazing if you look at some of the scatter points and graphs, certain districts will do many of these species, some will hardly do any at all, and it's still emerging. And that's another thing to take thoughtful consideration into what that implication may be. When you earn that diploma, that really shuts the door with special education, and that door does not reopen. With some of our students as well too, if they may want to seek and explore more, we may even let special education services like end but not close it, and see if you might need to be revisited later on. And personal curriculum, there's a lot of great information at the Michigan Department of Education website on personal curriculum. There's a parent guide. There's a lot of Q&A kinds of things that are there. It's a wonderful resource. And I highly recommend that as well too.
Great. And Olivia, you mentioned the 504 plan and working with the Office of Disability Services to inform your professors about any accommodations you need. Can you talk also about planning for regular dorm life and how do you disclose to your roommate that you have epilepsy? How do you prepare for possible seizures? How did you deal with that process, or how are you dealing with that process currently?
Well, since I'm going to go into my freshman year at Michigan State, I have not gone into the full, college mode, but
It's coming quick.
yes. I'm usually very open about my conditions,
Okay.
and I haven't had a tonic-clonic seizure for about 4 years, and I most likely will not have one in college, knock on wood. But since I've only sort of communicated with my roommate via text, I'm not quite in that sort of besties relationship. I can tell you totally what's going on with my brain and everything. I'll bring medication to the campus, but my family isn't quite sure yet how I'll get refills. If we're going to go through CVS, or if the health center on the campus is going to be able to do things, it gets complicated in that area. But my medical care is going to stay at the University of Michigan. But I'll probably inform my RA just in case, but if I have a real tonic-clonic seizure, the thing is, call 911. It's just...
Because it's pretty unlikely for you, so yeah. Okay, great, thank you. All right, so we're gonna shortly open up for questions, but I did want to see if anyone had any closing thoughts, any advice or closing thoughts that you want to share regarding transition.
Okay, I want to mention as well too, since we did not talk much about those students with more significant challenges and things like that, not that in Washtenaw County, many other places, there are post-secondary services that we provide. We usually work on those transition-based questions, and it's similar to a school year, the way we have it set up as well, but we call a lot of community-based instruction, vocational training, daily living skills, and those sorts of skill sets to help students to transition into their adult lives once they leave school, if they do not have a high school diploma. We also work very closely with adult service agencies that could be those lifelong supports for folks with more significant challenges, so they can be successful in transition as well.
I think the other thing I was going to say is that I was kind of forced to kind of move my daughter into the Medicaid system because you have to be in the Medicaid system in order to access some services. And now we have access to community living services through Michigan Department of Health. And they have just started working with us to help us to look at places to go for furthering education, maybe some job trainings and things like that. So they've been helpful too, but we had to go through that route in order for her to have access to that. So community living services is who I'm using. And I learned about them through ARC. ARC was wonderful. And I went to, my husband and I went to the After We're Gone meetings they have on the Denver Trail. And that was really enlightening about really doing person-centered, curriculum, person-centered life. And we asked our daughter if we could have power of attorney in case there was any issues, and she did sign that. We do not use it, and we told her we won't use it unless we have to, like if something's really serious, but at least that was our way of transitioning, allowing her to have some autonomy, but yet knowing that if she got herself in some big trouble, at least that we could intervene. So that's the system that we've used, our community living services, and we got power of attorney.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, and we're going to open it up for questions.
I have one. It's okay. I got a push close. Sorry. I have one question. You slightly touched on this, but I have a 13-year-old. She's almost 14. She'll be going into 7th grade this year, and they do the IEP without her there, and she's very, very vocal and likes to be a part of everything. Can we do an IEP with her there? Can I demand that?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
My daughter has it every.
I would highly recommend it as well, too.
Okay, because they've every time they've told me that they want to do it without her.
Oh, no.
And it's like,
I think it's a really important step. You know, maybe a baby step along the way is to sit there and say, we want her there for most of the meeting or something, give them that there's something that they may need to
right,
speak.
because
Maybe as a
normally
point
with the
step.
teachers.
But I think it'd be,
Okay.
and you can even start to talk about the transition piece, but if you want her there, she's gonna be there.
Especially if she's vocal.
But yeah, you want her,
I mean,
that's a good thing to
I've
have.
had both an IEP and a 504, and so I participated in both those meetings, and I know how that works.
I just want to say that I just went to college for my first years. I just transitioned over. And I don't have epilepsy, but I have a lot of other chronic illnesses. And so I just went through, moving my medications, and I found Walgreens is the best. Walgreens is very easy to transfer your prescriptions. They can get the text. It's the best thing ever. Medicaid's also been great. I'm in children's special health care, and I also get kid infusions, so I'm currently switching from doctors in my hometown to Grand Rapids because I'm going to Grand Valley. Yeah, cool. Yeah, this will be my sophomore year there. And so it's just been really difficult because my little sister who's here actually has epilepsy. So she's just starting to go through that whole transition of, figuring out what she wants to do with her life. And she's also, in a very hard spot because of how her epilepsy has went and how many credits she has in high school. So I didn't really have that issue because I graduated from high school just fine. But transitioning over was just a lot. And so it's a lot I want to really understand. So I want to come up here and say, if anybody wants to talk to me, because I did just do it.
Thank you so much.
I just wanted to ask Olivia, how did you do it when you were growing up? You said that you also had depression and anxiety, and I do too. So I'm wondering how you handle that along with epilepsy.
So I had my first seizure when I was 9, and so I had a huge support system from the very get-go. Both of my parents were very supportive, and they're right behind you right now. But it's hard. It's really hard dealing with depression, anxiety, and epilepsy. But you have to remind yourself that you've got a future, and you know more about things than other kids your age. And you're capable of so much. Even if the regular grading system tells you that you're not good enough. Like, I was in like higher smart person education, and then I had to drop down because I was depressed, and I took a bunch of school off, and I was having lots of problems with my seizures and my depression. But you have to remind yourself that even if you have struggles, you've got downs, but you're going to come up again. And you never give up, and you know that you'll have a much better future.
Thanks for the
That was my question too. Yeah, that's, she was a freshman. She was a freshman in high school, and she goes to Cass Tech, and her first year was rough. She missed literally 60 days of school. So now, at this point, she's going into her sophomore year. Just trying to do things a little differently and to be more proactive. Cass Tech is like a baby college, to be honest. So I'm kind of in the mode of, do you think a smaller school setting would be better for her? The logistics of what I got from Cass Tech is we're a little too busy to be consumed with your child in person. Not from everybody, but from some.
We just had a conversation just a second ago about some things too, and I'm not trying to talk about Washtenaw County, but I have another young lady that I work with, for example, who has some other health issues that may be similar to that. And one of the things I could feel, what I like about it are different types of educational strategies as well too. This young lady is extremely gifted as a writer and things of that nature, but what happened would be to go through a traditional semester, go about 2/3 of the way through, and then have some medical episodes and issues. So she wouldn't get credit for the work that she did. She would have consistently. This thing called project-based learning, which I kind of, that she was able to do and was able to earn her high school diploma and move on and forward with that. Because what it was able to do is to take the things in some chunks. So she was able to do it in smaller pieces and then still get that credit for that in order to do that. Which sometimes is harder to do in a traditional educational setting. And then sometimes in larger schools, it's harder to do as well. And it's unfortunate that I just get worried about is that different areas and different sections of towns and places and things like that may not have the same type of alternatives that are there. But there should be some things explored. Also, an advocate, again, it would be extremely important.
Right, and if your school, your individual school, if Cass Tech is not aware of those, you can also go to Wayne Risa, where Terry was from, the school nurse from the earlier, which is the Intermediate School District, and they have additional resources that maybe the school itself may not be aware of.
I have to add one thing from a parent perspective, in that I did take my daughter out of a big setting. It was small, but it was her decision. And if you ask her, she'll let you know. That was number one. And we made an arrangement with the high school that she could go back and graduate from the high school if she chose to. And so that was kind of a nice, because she was all in on that one, and it worked out beautifully.
One more question?
That was actually my mom who's there, she's up here. But my question is for Olivia. So your story is like a lot like mine, because I was diagnosed when I was like 8, and then I started going through depression and stuff. So how did you like deal with like people who were kind of like, oh well, other people go through more stuff than you do, so you shouldn't be like depressed and stuff like that?
Well, my sophomore year, because of my executive functioning and because as a teenager I slapped a girl because she was being mean to me. But that is not how to deal with it. because they're not going to get as far as you and I. Just, you know, they probably have their own problems and they need to take it out on somebody, and so they take it out on you. And they're just being mean people. They're just being mean and rude. So ignore them and go find someone else to be with, because that'll just make your sophomore experience so much easier. And then if you're thinking about going to a smaller high school, you should decide that for yourself. Don't let your mom decide. I mean, I was in a class of like 650, so that's the class that I graduated in. But the school itself is like 4 times that. So I got through it, and if you have a support system, and if you have like a 504 or an IEP, you should rely on that and make sure that your teachers know about it. And also make sure that your friends know. And make sure that they know that you have something and they shouldn't feel like they can take it down on you like, oh, you're depressed? Well, I'm depressed too because of this new assignment. Because like, that's just, oh my God.
Right, and I think it's important to realize depression is a medical condition. It's not a character flaw. It's not I'll just tough it up and deal with it. We all have problems. And it is related to epilepsy too. People with epilepsy are significantly higher risk for depression. So if anyone says, oh, you should be able to deal with this, other people have it harder than you, can say, you know, this is a medical condition. I have epilepsy and I have depression. And you know, so any other words of advice?
One other thing too,
Yeah.
I think it's really important when you go back to a plan in terms of if you're behind now, in terms of if your goal is to graduate, that plan to graduate is realistic. And, you know, don't let time go by to figure that out. Try to have a realistic plan set up that everybody can agree to. It was 4 years it happened, because I've been at certain high schools that shouldn't need to remain, but, you know, just working with a student recently who has been in high school for 3 years, he has 3 credits for graduation, he still wants to earn his diploma. And if you wait till you're 17 or 18 years old, it's so much more difficult to do that. And it needs to be realistic in terms of what you're capable of doing, and if it needs, and something to think about. If it takes a little bit of extra time, so be it, but that's the most important thing to do. But really have some honest, upfront discussions about that that's realistic. In other words, don't sit there and think, well, if I'm struggling right now with it, I'm going to have to double up on doing some things, you know, that could also impede that success as well, too. So you want to be, you know, think about that and try to work really, and that's a hard thing to do, but I think it's really important. Okay.
Well, thank you very much to all of our